Hi and welcome to Swedish Plant Guys. Today we're going to talk about curled leaves. Now this is a question we get quite a lot. Why do some plants curl their leaves like this? Now to be able to answer this question, we have to take a step back and consider how plants work. And one of the things we're going to be discussing here is actually how does a plant regulate the heat inside of its body. Now if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do, and hit that bell as well so you get a notification every time we put up something new. And give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and also share with your friends. So starting off, why do some plants curl their leaves like this? And what I mean by that is, why do they curl their leaves lengthwise like this? Now some plants curl their leaves like this as well, from the edge of the leaf. But what we're going to be talking about mainly today is why they curl it like this, along the entire length of the leaf. Now, a simple answer to this question is that when a plant is exposed to an extreme, and by that I mean an extreme by either light, temperature, humidity, or water availability, this could be one of the reactions you get from that plant. But first off, we have to know, how does a plant handle extremes? For instance, extremes in light or extremes in humidity, either high or low. How does a plant regulate the temperature of its own body? Now we humans, we regulate this using various different organs and glands. And we keep a core temperature around 37 degrees Celsius. But a plant can't do that. So what does a plant do to handle the temperature of its own body? And it needs to have a fairly constant temperature to be able to work and function properly. So I'm going to show you now. If we have a plant in a pot, we have a pot like this with some soil in it, preferably pumice. And then we have a trunk. And then we have some branches. And on those branches we have smaller branches, and then we have leaves as well, like that. And we have the roots. Now a plant doesn't have a heart like we do, that pumps around the blood in our entire body all the time. How does it work in a plant? How does it maintain the temperature within itself without something that is pumping it around? Well, the easy answer is water. The water actually regulates the entire temperature of a plant. But how does water move inside of a plant without a functioning heart, without something that is pumping it around its body? Well, it works like this. In the leaves, in every leaf here, we have small openings. Those openings are called stomata, klyvöppningar in Swedish. And the plant can actually open and close them. So we will call them like small windows that are opening and closing. And the plant can open and close them as they wish. So what happens here in these small stomata, in these small holes, you have water that is evaporating. It is evaporating from the leaves out into the air here. Now when that happens, when water escapes from the leaves, it actually fills up with that water from the roots. So through a form of osmosis here, the roots absorb water in the bottom of the pot, and then because it's evaporating from here, it actually starts to move up the stem, up the branches, out to the leaves, and then it starts to evaporate. So we have that constant flow of water inside of the plant. But it's not only water, it's also nutrients, it's sugars and starches, it's hormones as well. This is what we call the transport system within the plant. And it works because of these small holes, the stomatas, that are opening and closing. So if the plant were to open all of those small holes, a lot of water will start to evaporate, and a lot of water can start to be sucked up by the roots and continue to move inside of the plant. And this is the perfect way to keep a good constant temperature within the plant. Because the water down here by the roots usually have a lower temperature or a higher temperature, depending on if you have a warm climate or a cold climate here. So the water acts as a buffer. That cold or warm water down by the roots actually makes the plant have a constant temperature. But, as I said before, when we have that curling of the leaf like this, the plant has been exposed to an extreme, either by light, temperature, humidity, or water availability. And a lot of plants do this, especially the vine plants. This is a Scindapsus pictus, which usually uses this method quite often. But a big variety of plants uses this system by curling the leaves. Next to me here I have a dragon plant, or a Dracena. This is the Dracena Janet Lind. The Dracena uses the exact same way. They actually curl their leaves sometimes like this. They curl them inwards, lengthwise. Now, why do they do that? Well, if we have a very high temperature outside, we have the sun and it's extremely hot. This means that the plant needs to open a lot of the stomatas on the leaves. They are normally, a lot of them are on the underside of the leaf. You also have some stomatas on the upper side, but most of them are on the underside of the leaf. Now, if it's really, really hot, they open as many stomatas as possible to be able to suck up a lot of water, transport that within the system, letting it evaporate. And that is how the plant keeps cool in a warm climate. A lot of heat, a lot of sunlight. Now, if it gets extremely hot, or if it gets a lot of direct sunlight, the plant can feel like, okay, I'm having a trouble handling this. So one of the things that the plant can do is actually to start to curl these leaves. Now, by doing that, they're actually closing in the stomatas underneath the leaf and creating a buffer around the stomatas. And this helps the plant to be able to still open and close the stomatas. Because when it's really, really hot and all of that water inside of the plant wants to evaporate, it is a stress for the plant to be able to hold some of that water to function and opening and closing to let some of that water evaporate. If it's really, really hot, all of that water will just go straight out of the plant. And the plant cannot hold some of that water for its functions. But by doing this, by closing around these stomatas, by curling the leaf like this, it creates its own microclimate underneath. Now, it helps to protect those stomatas, and it helps the plant to be able to continue to opening and closing it as it wants to. Because if it gets too hot, all of them will be open and water will just go straight through the plant. This is actually one of the easiest ways for water to evaporate. Because we have a lot of water here, and when it gets really, really hot, or it can also get a really, really low humidity, all of that water wants to evaporate to make that difference in humidity, to find a balance between that. And one of the easiest ways, some of that water down here is actually going to start to evaporate straight through the soil. But the easiest way is actually to let the water be sucked up by the plant and then to evaporate by all of those leaves in the plant. But the plant needs to close those stomata to be able to keep some of that water to function. And this is one way of helping it doing that. So when do we find this symptom on a plant? Well, if a plant has gotten too much direct sunlight, which means that it's getting really, really hot on the leaves. This is one way for it to be able to handle that. On the other hand, you could also have a very, very high humidity or a very, very low humidity. This stresses the plant as well. The stomata have a problem opening and closing. They want to be open all the time. So this is also a way of helping in a very low humidity or very high humidity. And also, if the plant shouldn't have any access to water down by the roots, if the water stops down here, it also needs to be able to close those stomata as much as it can, because otherwise all the water inside of the plant will evaporate and it will wilter and it will die. So by doing this, it's also helping to close those stomata, keeping the water inside of the plant. So this is the main reason why a plant curls their leaves like this. It's to be able to help the plant to keep a constant temperature within its body. However, there are a couple of other things a plant can do to help maintain that temperature. Now, one of those things is actually, if we have a plant like this and it feels that it's getting really, really hot, you have direct sunlight hitting this plant. Now, what a plant usually does is that it wants to direct all of these leaves towards the light, to be able to suck up all that light, to be able to photosynthesize and to be able to function and start producing those sugars and starches. But if it gets too hot and if it's a plant that doesn't want direct sunlight, what it actually can do is that it can move the leaves. Because just by shifting the leaves a little bit, it will not hit the surface of the leaf in the same way. And this will also have a cooling effect on the plant. So some plants actually shift their leaves so that it doesn't get hit by that direct sunlight. That is another way of helping to preserve the temperature within its body. Now some plants go to do an even more extreme. They actually start to wilter a little bit and they start to hang down like this. And this is because the plant gets so stressed that it wouldn't even help to start to curl the leaves. It just droops them like that. They start to wilter. But that also has an effect, because when that leaf wilters, the same thing happens. Less surface area of that leaf is getting hit by the direct sunlight. So it cools down the plant as well. Another way is for a plant to produce something we call a cuticle. Now, some plants, like the Samioculcas here, the CC plant, has quite a thick cuticle. Now, by cuticle, I mean that waxy surface on the leaf. Some plants have a really, really hard, waxy surface, like the CC plant. But some plants doesn't have that at all, or has a thinner cuticle, like this ficus here doesn't have a really dense and hard cuticle like the CC plant has. Now that cuticle has a function. It actually protects the leaves, and it helps because that waxy surface actually helps to reflect the sunlight from the leaves, which means that it doesn't absorb as much heat. So that cuticle is also one way of keeping the plant cool. Now, yet another way is by having a specific color in the plant. Now, if you have a plant that has a lot of white, for instance, in its color, or if it has a flower that is white, that is usually an indication that that plant is suitable to be placed somewhere where it's very, very hot. Because white reflects heat, reflects sunlight. Now, if it's a darker green, or if it's almost black, the color black actually absorbs light, absorbs warmth. So that is yet another way of keeping the plant cool. It's the color of the leaves or the color of the flower. Now, one last thing, we've talked a lot in this video on the extremes of heat. Now, there is another side to that, and that is cold as well. And plant has a way of regulating cold as well. But usually that is not a problem with our indoor plants. And this is what we usually talk about in this channel. But they also have a function that keeps them cool or heated up in wintertime. And what happens then is that when autumn is coming and it feels that it gets less and less light during the day, the temperatures are plummeting, they're going down. This is a trigger for the plant to stop growing and actually start to use the sugars and starches that it has produced to look inwards. It gets a better root system, and also it starts to load up each cell within the plant with sugars and starches. Now, the more sugars and starches you have within each cell and the less water you have in that cell, the more cold it can withstand. So some plants are really, really good at this. They are actually creating some form of a antifreeze for the winter. But some plants can't handle that. That is why we have frost-hardy plants, for instance, that can only withstand some type of cold. We have a full scale of different type of plants, how much cold they can withstand. And this is basically how good they are at loading up on those starches and sugars. And also, some plants and some trees also drop their leaves in wintertime. That is also to help them to withstand those extremes, those extreme colds during the winter. Now, I hope you have a better understanding on why some of your plants actually curl their leaves, and also what other things you can look for to understand that, okay, my plant has been exposed to an extreme for that plant, either in light, humidity, temperature, or water availability, usually meaning that there is no water in the pot. Now, that was all for this video. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and also subscribe to our channel and hit that bell as well so you get a notification every time we put up something new. And also please share with your friends, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook, of course. So until next time, hej då!